back on the Bobcast this week, and it's our last one of the athletics year, as every sport has now wrapped up their seasons, and we're kicking off this week with track and field head coach Shane Brookshire after they finished up the MEC championships. Some really impressive performances over last week, Sunday, Monday, and Tuesday. Coach, I just want to get your thoughts on the team's performance as a whole and what you saw down at Glenville.
As a whole, it was a close race between for second through sixth, on the men's side, and I believe it's only just about 18 points or so separated second through sixth, and I think our men did really well. We had didn't get as many points in some areas that we were looking for, but I know it was they battled pretty strong throughout the meet, and definitely had some outstanding performances on that side. On the women's side, impressed by what the women did because last year at indoor we were last in ninth place, and this year coming in getting sixth place and having more women score points, more women get on the podium, and it's just a great thing to see from the growth of that program.
Absolutely. And you talked about on the men's side where you guys finished up in fifth, but ended Monday in third place and just kind of fell off that just a little bit. Like you said, I think it was only about 2 or 3 points that separated you guys from that third place in the end, but very impressive. We'll start out on the women's side, and Alyssa Mori, and again, we've talked about Alyssa all year, got second in the hurdles with a PR in 15:01, and just happened to be beat by a girl that PR'd herself and by a whole 0.4 of a second. Second in the triple jump, tied for the furthest jump, but due to circumstances, got second place in the end, and then also fifth in high jump. But just an all-around great athlete, and like we said, if you want your best performances, you may as well save them for the best meet of the season.
It took her best performances just to keep her in second place, and she was ranked number 1 going in for triple and number 1 for the hurdles, and in that triple jump, she had fouled her first 2 attempts. On her third jump to make the finals, she actually jumped the best mark at the time with the 10.89. And on the fifth jump, the girl from Concord jumped 10.94 and then jumped 11.09. And it was great to see Alyssa step up on that sixth and final jump to jump that 11.09, which is crazy that she just missed winning conference by 1 centimeter. And so that was great to see her get second there, and then going in the next day for the 100 hurdles, it took a huge PR by her to just stay in second place. She ran 15.16 in high school and dropped 0.15 off of that, and you can't ask anything more than their absolute best, and it just didn't work out to where she won both events, but so finishing number 2 in both was a huge step up from last year, where she'd finished about 4th or 5th in the triple and 3rd in the 60 hurdles. So, she's shown the conference that she's one of the best all-around athletes out there.
Absolutely, and another one where we talked about, a couple of weeks ago when you had your second to last meet of the year, and these races that are going to go down to hundredths of a second, thousandths of a second, and just really close times that everyone's competing. So like you said, the seeds don't really matter to anyone, and it can be anyone's race. Going back to the triple jump, also wanted to mention Omakemi Balagoon getting 4th place, and a very impressive performance for her as well, who's kind of been consistent all year, finishing in that top 5 range, and then another good performance here at the meet. And like you said, just two athletes ahead of her in between Alyssa that just had better jumps that day.
Yeah, that was an area where we thought we might be able to pull off 1st and 3rd, and we get 2nd and 4th because that girl from Concord just came out of nowhere and hit a massive PR for herself. Omakemi, she had a kind of up and down season, but definitely finished strong, with the season best performance with that 10.7, and that was great to see out of her. So, it's looking like a strong future for our women's side in the triple jump, and really as our program as a whole in the triple jump, because we have several good athletes on the men's side in that area.
Absolutely, and we'll go into that men's side. John Jenkins, 4th in the triple jump, his season best by almost a full half meter, and then Rondell Carlton, his 7th place, and his best jump since the first meet of the season. And those two, again, just a little bit unfortunate that other guys had some top performances as well, but two guys certainly that can be at the top or near the top of the conference in years to come also.
Yeah, I mean, that them just dropping slightly in the rankings, I said, like, it's throughout the whole meet, that's kind of how it went for us. Was like we would have great performances, like season best, PRs, but other athletes would just do a little bit better, and we would just lose 1 or 2 points here and there. And I mean, like across several event areas, that was the obvious difference between us getting third and us getting fifth. But so Jonathan and Rondell, obviously, like they step up when it matters, and like I said, as long as they give their best, like as long as our athletes give their best out there, like we can't be too disappointed in the overall outcome.
Absolutely. And another one of those guys where, you talk about getting a PR and doing the best that they possibly can, but just the results may not show it. I wanted to bring up Daniel Foster, who PR'd in the 800, got fifth place with a 155.8, a 155 in the 800. And a guy that has been in that kind of top 5, top 6 all year, and just there's 3 or 4 athletes that are just a little bit better than him, but for him and for you being a distance coach, it's certainly proud of him for getting that PR.
Yeah, he stepped up and got points where we weren't expecting it, and so that helped us out quite a bit. Like especially when it came to beating Davis and Elkins by 2 points. I mean, he ran a 157.06 in prelims, which got him to the finals, and it was a close race for just to get into the finals, because I think it was only about a second and a half separated all 8 athletes, and so he squeaked in there and got into the finals, and then stepped up big the next day with the 155.23, which is probably about a second and a half PR for him, and his confidence was a lot higher after that race, because at the beginning of the year he was a little down about not running as quick in the 800, and just kept telling him to trust the process, that we'll hit our big times at the end of the season when it matters most. And for him to run 2 of his 3 lifetime best times in just a span of less than 24 hours was huge, and I said got some points where we weren't expecting it.
Absolutely, and certainly one where, again, you can improve as the years go by and try and get that PR up more and more. Another distance runner that we've talked about, again, all year, Hannah Muir, 6th place in the steeplechase, almost the exact same time that she had from her first time running in the event. And I remember when we talked about it, you said if she can just get that water jump down and be able to get over the hurdle, she could really improve that time. But for just her second time running the race, it's certainly an impressive time.
Oh, yeah. Any time that the athletes can go under 13 minutes in the steeple for their first, 2 steeples and back-to-back, and we'd only been practicing for a couple of weeks. And we still got to do a lot of work on that water jump. That's kind of her Achilles heel with the whole race. But she's motivated to get better at it, and we're going to have a lot more time this next year to work on it and to make her into one of the top athletes, because I think the winning time was only 11:54, and I know she can run under 11:30, and it's just a matter of building up her confidence, getting her more used to jumping on the barrier and pushing off of it. And I know that once we get that down, she'll be the top athlete in the conference for the steeple. But so coming in and just kind of stepping up where we needed points on the women's side, and we were just trying to find where we could get those points at. And she came in, got 6, and very proud of her performance with that. And then she came back the next day and ran her 3rd best 5K ever. So it was a solid double of Monday, Tuesday for her.
Absolutely. And another one where it's certainly, coming in as a first year, certainly has a lot of talent already, but she can just build on that, and then starting in the fall where she's going to run cross country for you, certainly can't hurt to run a little bit longer than the 5K and the 3,000 steeplechase to build up, the muscles and get that stamina back after, no one really had that full off season and the fall season for your distance athletes to get into shape. Want to then go into Morgan Matthews and Justin Dunklin in the heptathlon decathlon. Both of them finished 4th, but it was season best scores for both of them. Morgan with a 32.84 and Justin with a 49.18. Morgan has just steadily improved all year. I remember when we were talking at the beginning of the season, when she had that first time competing in the heptathlon, you said it was going to be hard for her to try and get these scores in and be able to practice these events. But finishing with her best placing in the season and best performance as well, but certainly one to be proud of and another one to improve upon going forward.
Yeah, she did extremely well. Like, she's been battling through some injuries, and so we've really held her back this last month, and just focusing on recovery and just doing a little bit of work here and there. And she was ranked fifth coming in. One girl didn't declare, so she was seeded fourth and got fourth. Took a season best, like personal best on the point side, and like I said, we can't ask for much more than that. And I mean, the same thing with Justin Dunklin. Like, yeah, he was ranked second going into the meet and got fourth, but he PR'd in the high jump, PR'd in the long jump, and got his season best too by I think about 300 points. And I said, can't ask for much more. I said, just other athletes performed just a little bit better than we did, and Justin did extremely well for his second decathlon ever.
And for a good portion of that, he was in second place, and like you said, he won the high jump, won the long jump, his best two events in it. I think the difference between second and him was only 200, 300 points between the two, and really it was the throws that did it, where it's his weak link that, the shot put and the jab are certainly were areas to improve, but if he can get those to improve, he certainly can compete for that second place, even going up to the top spot at some point.
Yeah, that's areas where both himself and Morgan can improve greatly at, and I mean that's going to come down to like where our focus is at, like at practices and in the weight room. And so I know that we need to get more upper body work, like for our decathletes and heptathletes, and so hopefully we can start incorporating that more into our program, and so that they become more well-rounded athletes. And I said if they can get their throws better, then they're going to be right up there towards the top of the conference. But like we do have several athletes coming in next year on the heptathlon and decathlon side, and I think that's a area where we're confident that we can score a lot more points.
Absolutely, and certainly can't help for the team as a whole as well to be able to work with one another. If the athletes coming in have maybe better strengths in some areas, they can kind of coach up Justin and Morgan on areas that they're already good at and areas that they need to improve as well. And speaking of improvement, in Mark Vaughns and Adam Smith, 5th and 6th in the pole vault, but for both of them, their first year doing the event and not getting their PRs necessarily, but competing in the conference and showing that they belong, finishing right there in the middle of the pack. Obviously, the Glenville athletes doing well as they have all season, but for your two guys, very impressive for them just in the season as a whole.
Yeah, it's a great experience for both of them to get into the conference meet, and especially for Mark, who's first year ever doing pole vault, and he's a workhorse for us because he did pole vault, and then he ran the 4x1, ran the 110 hurdles, the 400 hurdles, and didn't qualify in the 400 hurdles for finals, but did in the 110s and scored points for us there, and came back in the 4x4 that day. And so he can do it all pretty much, and like I said, he's extremely well-rounded and was one of our top point scorers overall for the meet.
Absolutely, and I'm going to go into that 4x4, 4x1, where first we'll talk about Nick Richardson and Nathaniel Messi, who went 1-4 in the 400, and those two, similar to Oma Kemi and Alyssa Mullery, where in the triple jump they were 1-3, and these guys I think were 1-4 going into it as well. Nick getting I think second or third place in the prelims, and then pulling out a sub 49 in the finals, and then Nathaniel as well doing well as he has, and he's setting PRs the past couple of meets and doing well again. And then part of the, like you mentioned, the 4x4 and the 4x1 teams where they finished second and third, in second in the 4x4, third in the 4x1 with Mark and Clay Washington, and both of those were season best times. But I want to start with Nick and Nathaniel both in the 400 where Nick also was competing in the 200. But the two of them in the 400 getting big points for you guys as well.
Yeah, that was an area where we were expecting a lot of points at, just because of where we were ranked going in and who we had running it. Had Nick as the number 1 seed almost all year. When he first ran the Open 4, and he came through, and it was a long day for him. Because the day before he also had the prelims in the 4 and the 2, and then the next day counting on him in the 4x1, and then in the 4, the 2, and the 4x4. And he's strong, he's fast, he's competitive, he wants to be the best one out there. And it was almost a guarantee that he would win, and is kind of what you want to think and stuff. But every time he goes out there, he's going to be competitive and give it his best. And Nathaniel Messi right behind him in the prelims set another big PR by 0.3 of a second, and then for him to bounce back the next day and run a strong 400 again. And so once again, 4x1 and 4x4 for him too. It's a testament to the work that they put in, and the work that my sprints coach Alex Kemp has done to prepare these athletes to be able to handle that kind of workload at the conference meet.
And it's one where in the 4x4 and the 4x1, it was both season best times for them. And in the 4x4, I believe it was, they set the season record by almost 3 full seconds in that event. Obviously you talk with Alex all the time, but did he mention anything where he said, this is what we worked on and this is how we improved, or they just all kind of went out and ran their fastest times of the year?
Well, we finally got into a 4x4 that was competitive, and because throughout the whole year it was 1 or 2 teams, and at Charleston was our last competitive one, or the only competitive one of the whole season, when we ran 3:21 and lost to Charleston there by 0.4 of a second. And so it was just a matter of getting into that race where they're going to have faster athletes around them to help push them. And that's what happened. We knew it was going to be close with Charleston, and we knew it was going to be close with Davis and Elkins, and that we had to beat Davis and Elkins in order to beat them in the overall standings. And that was just an exciting race in general. The 4x4 is always the premier event of any track meet. That's one where everybody's already done with their other events, so you get a lot of people cheering throughout the whole thing. And we know here at Frostburg, they've had very competitive 4x4s over the years with the school record at 3:12, and that's something that we're eyeing in the future, because we've got Nick, who's in his second year, this was his first outdoor season, and Nathaniel Messi, who's a true freshman. They're already running 48s, 49s, and come their junior, senior year, this could be a 4x4 that could potentially go to nationals.
Absolutely. And talking about that school record where that 6 seconds isn't totally far off for an event like that, where a couple seconds from each guy could break that record, get to the NCAAs when we're eligible, of course. And so following that, want to get into once again the throws. We'll start on the women's side. Wanted to bring up Austin Swallow, who we haven't talked about a ton this year, but got 6th place in the javelin and PR'd by almost 5 full meters. And you talked earlier about Daniel getting 5th place in the 800 and picking up points where you didn't expect. But Austin, certainly one where it kind of shot up out of nowhere and got you guys some points on the women's side.
Yeah, that was actually one that we were expecting, and because we added Austin mid-season, and she came from softball back in the fall, and decided to come out for track, and so we were kind of thinking where we might put her at, and just tried her out in the javelin and hammer, and which she also hit a PR there. But in the javelin, we know it's not a very strong event in the conference, and and with her background in softball, figured that she'd have a good strong arm, and it doesn't directly correlate, but it's a good background to have. And so we tried her out. She qualified at the Wesleyan meet, and then got in. I think she was ranked 10th or so coming into the meet, and we just knew that with a little bit of time, which is another athlete that hey, you got 3 weeks of practice in, and she comes in and throws and gets sixth place, and so I think that this is going to be an event area for her, like in the future, where she actually has like a year's worth of training for it. That she'll be one of the top athletes in the conference. But yeah, for her to come in, and that was kind of like one of our surprises for the conference, that we knew that we can get some points there out of her, and like the rest of the conference didn't know who she was, so that sometimes that helps too.
Certainly somewhere we might be the champions in fewest time practiced versus where you placed in the events, where all these other teams have been in the MEC for a number of years now. They've had the practice time. They've gotten full years, and we're coming up from Division III and kind of surprising a lot of these teams with how the athletes can perform in such a short amount of time. And then you talked about the hammer throw, and Alexa Bradburn got third place, a PR by 3.5 meters for her, and an event where you kind of called this one where she can get into that top three if she sets that PR and she can get that one clean throw, and she got it with that one throw to get her into the podium.
Yeah, that hammer competition is probably, like, obviously, I mean, is her best competition of the whole year. Like, she's consistent with all of her throws, like throwing like anywhere from like 38 to 42 meters. Like, she was finally put it all together at the end, which is, I mean, what we always talk about is like just working on one thing, like a few things here and there throughout the whole season, and trying to get that down by the conference meet, and hope that it clicks. And at conference, it clicked for her, and she hit massive PRs, and she's going to be closing in on that school record as well, which I think Kirsten Taney currently holds it. Like, just set it a couple years ago at the CAC championships, and so like she stepped up, like got onto the podium, and I mean that was huge for us.
Yeah, I remember actually looking that up, and I forgot to write it down, but I did look, and I saw that she was only, a couple of meters away from that record, another one where she can improve on the year. And also kind of have to mention with that third place, with a slight asterisk next to it, because I think Fleming, the thrower from Wheeling, is just like outstanding in every event that she does, and can make the NCAAs basically every year, where she's a full, almost 10 meters out ahead of the next competition. So really, it's a second place among the human athletes for the MVC for Alexa. And then obviously, last but not least, the men's throwing. And we talk about it all year, but John Kearns and Mike Belker, they go 1-4 in the hammer with John winning, and then 1-4 in the discus with Mike winning that one. But John setting the MEC meet record in the hammer throw to win that event, and he kind of needed it because the next two guys also set that record, but he just had the best throw out of them. And then Mike in the discus, where he did have the number one seed, and he ended up coming through on that to win it. But two guys certainly with top performances when you guys needed them most, especially when you're going up against the Charleston throwers, and they're just as talented.
Yeah, I mean, what a way for them to end their careers here and stuff, was to go out on top in their number one event areas. And Mike, and John in the discus, it was pouring rain, and they weren't going to delay the meet to wait for better weather. I mean, they had to do the same thing for the shot put, and which is why we didn't do as well there. But on the discus side, I mean, that's why the marks were a lot lower than what they normally are. And but Mike, he stepped up and took that first place, and which, I mean, he was ranked first coming in, and just being consistently towards the top there. And John was struggling a little bit, but on his last throw of his college career, got through 43 meters, and yeah, he wasn't too happy about it, but it was good enough to get fourth place that day, and solid points there. And then so you go into the hammer throw the day before, and just knowing that Nathan Stout from Charleston, who's phenomenal all around, could pull off a 55-meter hammer throw, and it was going to take likely a PR out of John just to have a chance at beating Nathan, and that's what happened. Is Nathan had fouled, and on one of John's last throws, he stepped up, and I believe it was his fifth throw. He threw the 54 meters, which I believe is also over a meter PR for him. that day. And I mean, that's what it took to win, like, because Stout had already thrown like high 53s, and so we knew John could perform with that. Like, we knew that he could throw further than 54, and he did, like, locked in the championship. And on his sixth throw, he actually threw it into the cage and left a huge dent on the frame, and so just left his mark there in Glenville. But like, that was looking like it was going to be about a 60-meter throw, according to my throws coach, and he was just too excited and released a little too early. But I said, what a great way for both of them, like Mike and John, to finish off their careers, like training together for these last couple years. Mike being a JUCO transfer from Hagerstown, and just get the opportunity for them to go out as champions in their event areas.
Absolutely, and one that you could be happy with getting to compete this year after last year the outdoor season had been cut short, obviously with the pandemic, no championships, and to win it this year, and John to get that victory in the first year in the MEC, certainly kind of proving that our throws team is one to certainly compete with for the next couple of years as you bring in more athletes. But, once again, just congratulations on the whole season. Obviously, this meet, one that you were very excited about and performed well. The athletes really stepped up, but the season the off season isn't too short for you as you come back for cross country once again in the fall. So you have a quick turnaround, but all the athletes for track certainly in the off season to improve. A lot of good young athletes to look forward to next year, and we want to thank you once again for this week and every week coming to talk to us on the Bobcast.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Back on the Bobcast this week and wrapping up the season for softball with head coach Bill Vasko. Coach, the MEC tournament this weekend, Friday and Saturday that you guys played. Pretty hectic, all things told, with 2 games on Friday and then 3 on Saturday, just missing out on going to the MEC championship game, and a very successful season for you guys in your first year competing in the MEC. Want to get your just overall thoughts on the championship weekend as a whole, and then, on the entire season of what you thought of your team's performances.
We're, as a staff, extremely proud of what the team did this past weekend. And just in general, we talked about prior to the start of this year that, we felt like we had a talented group that could compete not only for the North Division but for the conference title, and that a lot of teams were overlooking us, and that we were going to shock and surprise some people this year with what we did. And I think throughout the season, even though the majority of the season we were in first place in the North Division, I think some teams, every time we played someone, I felt like they took us lightly, that they didn't feel like we were for real. And I think by the end of the year, people were starting to realize, we faltered a little bit towards the end of the regular season playing against some of the top teams in the conference. But for the most part, we were competitive in those games. And our players realized that even though they were the top teams that we were playing and we weren't coming out on the right end of the scoreboard, that we could compete with them and that they weren't better than us. And it was at that point when they realized that I knew we had a shot in the conference tournament. And to be able to go in, win that first game, which was, I think we were a little tight, a little bit nervous, but, we did what we needed to do, held them off there kind of towards the end, Concord that is, and, gave away a game against State in the second game that we were winning, and gave it away late in the 6th inning was disappointing. But be able to bounce back and win those first 2 games like we did with our backs against the wall on Saturday, and then just coming up a little bit short against West Liberty, and I think we gave them everything that they could handle. And then them ultimately winning the conference tournament. Just super pleased and proud and happy for the team for what they did and how they battled all weekend and all season long. I think the tournament is just a reflection of, what the season was like for us, that, we performed really well. We had our backs against the wall. We bounced back, did what we needed to do, and we just came up a little bit short. And for our first year going through all that, pleased with where we ended up. Obviously you're never satisfied if you're not the last one standing, and I think our seniors are disappointed that it ended how it did, but they gave us everything that we asked them to over the weekend, and our returners, I think, are hungry now that they know how close we are to come back next year and make a statement in the Mountain East. So overall, like I said, you're disappointed in not finishing the job, but super happy with the way that the young ladies all performed the entire weekend and battled and kept the energy up and just never gave up the entire weekend.
Absolutely, and obviously no coach ever wants to end the season on any type of loss, but those two losses did come to the two teams that ended up playing in the championship game, the loss against West Virginia State and then the loss against West Liberty. Wanted to start off on the weekend against Concord. You said it was a very tight game, a team that you had split at home earlier this season, and a very big performance from Bree Powell, who had 4 of this team's 6 RBI in that game, a couple of big 2 RBI singles for her, and really was able to swing the bat and get the team going. I wanted to talk about as well, like over the season, that she's kind of the motivator on this team. Whenever someone maybe doesn't have a great at bat, or they're fighting in the count, she's always the one that I can hear from the dugout is always, come on, you got this, let's go, next to pitch, next at bat, let's go. Always just super positive and motivating to her team, and then getting it done on the field as well.
Yeah, going into the Concord game, we felt like we could do well hitting against them, despite splitting with them early in the year. And, like I said, I think we started off a little bit tight, a little bit nervous, and then Bree really helped us break through with both those hits that were critical to give us a good cushion there and jumpstart us to that 6-0 lead. And then, they battled back, give credit to them to be able to do that, and we were able to hold them off. So obviously, Bree's contributions in that game were critical for us getting off to a good start. And, I mean, you're absolutely right. I met with Bree this morning and, said that, we had the players kind of, write down some compliments about their teammates, and the coaches were already well aware, but, I think hearing it from some of her teammates that, she is kind of the catalyst for the energy and the positivity that we have on the bench. And no matter what happens and no matter how she's performing, she has always been the leader in that regard to make sure that she's picking everybody up and finding a way to get the team back into it if things aren't going our way. So appreciate all of that she's done this year, and looking forward, into the future as she continues in that role and heading into her junior season, being a big part of the leadership for our team, to set good example in those regards for some of our younger players.
Absolutely, and certainly important when you have 5 seniors that are leaving after this year. You have 2 juniors that can step up in Ava Ganibas and Kennedy Batchelor as well. Ava had a really strong season in her own right, had a couple of big hits for you guys as well. I remember the one 6-game homestand that you guys had a few weeks ago when it was that senior weekend, and she just came out and kind of lit everything on fire and hit a couple of home runs and was really a jumper cable. But those two as well, just building relationships with this team, and Kennedy serving as starting catcher for a lot of the games, can also kind of move around in the infield wherever you want to play her. Ava in the outfield as well at either the 2 corner outfield spots, but certainly 2 players that next year can kind of step up like Bree and take on some leadership role when they're seniors.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think Ava and Kennedy both not only performed well on the field, but are well liked on the team. And their role is a little bit different. Where they keep a lot of the other players loose. A little bit, they bring some humor to the team, which is much needed in a long season like we play. And I think and hope that they understand that that their role will change a little bit as being seniors and only being 2 seniors. That they're going to be the leaders on the team that other players look to, whether it's returners or the incoming freshmen that we have next year that are going to see them as the 2 seniors. So I think they'll be prepared for that role. We'll help them prepare for that role to be able to do that and step up and be a little more vocal when they need to be as leaders on and off the field as well. So looking forward to seeing how they continue to develop and grow and mature into that role.
And so we talked about the win against Concord, the 6-4, and then a 5-2 loss against West Virginia State, which you mentioned kind of let things go there at the end of the sixth inning, which put your backs against the wall, as you put it, to the next day, where basically have to win all 3 games, and it started with one game against West Virginia Wesleyan, a 2-1 win for you guys, very tight. All the runs were scored in the third inning, and as she's done almost all year, Taylor McCarty it was that came up with the big hit, 2 RBI against Wesleyan, who have a very good pitching staff, and by staff I basically mean Abby O'Shields, who can pitch basically 3 games in a row if they need her to, and she's just a machine out there. But Taylor got the big hit against her, and you guys, with your own pitching staff, able to shut it down. But Taylor, I mean, just every single week, every single series, it seems like she has at least 1 or 2 big hits in her to just come up with that clutch gene that you can't really coach in players.
Yeah. I mean, man, to the performance overall just against Wesleyan was just incredible because, you know, obviously when we had played them a couple of weeks ago, they got the best of us in game 1 where we didn't play well at all, and then you know, we blew an opportunity in the 7th inning to lose to them. They're a good team, and they're a really good hitting team. And like you said, O'Shields is a heck of a pitcher. So for us to be able to grab a couple of runs and then hold down their offense like we did, it was just an incredible team effort. And I mean, I have all respect for Wesleyan and the things that they've done as a program over the years. And Coach Warner, who's been kind of there for a while, and the things he's accomplished as a coach with that program. To be able to come away with a 2-1 win against a team like that in that type of environment, you know, like where it's win or go home, was pretty awesome. To be able to close that game out like we did. It was a pretty intense, energetic game on both sides, and it just, I mean, both teams had all the juice in that one. You know, thankful. You know, like you said, Taylor stepped up with the big hit. You know, I know that there are times where she feels like she should be doing more with the bat, but, you know, to come in those critical situations and propel the team like that is a huge lift. And, you know, to me, I mean, there were a lot of highlights throughout the weekend, but to be able to come back, because I wasn't really sure how the team was going to respond after dropping that game against State late like we did. And I told them afterwards that, hey, in this type of double elimination, there's got to be one team that comes out of the losers bracket. And we're up against it where, excuse me, we knew we had to win 3 games on Saturday, but, you know, I said, there's no reason why that one team can't be us, and let's just take it one game at a time. And it was a pretty awesome feeling to be able to come away with a win there.
Yeah, and then at the end of that game as well, Shauna Leonard, who had come on and replacing Sydney Theobald, Sydney had pitched really well, only allowed 1 run, and it wasn't earned. And then Shauna came in, finished out the final 3 innings, and then got herself into a little bit of trouble at the end. And it was Wesleyan where she had her roughest outing of the year. It's 8 runs and 4 of them earned earlier in the season, but walked the first batter and then allowed an infield single, but then struck out the next 3 batters to end that game. A really clutch performance from her.
Yeah. Sid did an awesome job the entire day. I think she pitched 13 or 14 innings on Saturday, and, I mean, she held Wesleyan down. Like I said, they're just a good hitting team all around, and their best hitters weren't able to do anything, and, you know, that was a credit to our pitching staff. And, you know, like I said, Sid had a long day and just kept trotting back out there every time we asked her to, and Shauna came in kind of in the late portion of some games, and that Wesleyan game kind of shut it down there, like you said, at the end to finish it off. So we're really pleased overall with what the pitching staff did the entire weekend. You know, in a tournament situation like that, you know, you're going to have a lot of close games where it's going to be kind of the pitching leading things, and our staff kind of went toe-to-toe with everybody else's pitching staff. And, you know, there were some opportunities throughout the weekend where, you know, we didn't score as many runs, where you know, kind of same thing we've talked about all year. We let teams off the hook when we had runners in scoring position, but again, when you're in a tournament situation, you're going against the best pitchers every single game. Like, that you're going to not have as many opportunities to score and that you're going to have to count on your pitching staff, and they really came through.
Yeah, and then the next game, it was against Notre Dame, basically a half hour after you just get through that real tough battle with Wesleyan and Notre Dame. And you talk about a pitcher's duel. It's 0-0 going into the bottom of the 7th inning. And then Aaliyah Ramey came up with a big hit to get on base. She was pinch ran for by one of the, call them the unsung heroes, and Emily Hughes, who came into pinch run. Her and Brianna Monday both have been in that situation where they don't really get at bats, but they're able to score a run and use their speed on the base paths for you guys. She came on, got to second on the sac bunt. Katie Ernst came up with a big single, and then Kat Treff, another senior on this team who was an all-tournament selection for you guys, just put the ball in play, forced the error from the second baseman, allowed you guys to walk it off.
Yeah, I mean, it was a heck of a game. I felt like we were a little bit flat in that game. Like you said, we had to come right back, play again after what felt like an exhausting game against Wesleyan, because it took everything that we had on the field and off the field to will ourselves to get through that. And, I felt we were a little flat against Notre Dame and maybe took it for granted that we beat them 4 times during the regular season and that it was going to be easy, because we hit the heck out of the ball every time we played Notre Dame. And kudos to their pitcher. She held us down a little bit. But we were able to go back out there and, match the zeros every time with our pitching staff. And the last inning didn't play out exactly like I had thought, because I sent Emily on Katie's hit, and still really not sure whether she didn't see me. She said she didn't think she could make it. I thought she was playing a little bit safe, was a little nervous there. But fortunately, she came right back because the infield was in on Kat's hit, and the second baseman had to move a little bit, and she had a good lead on that to see as soon as that it was out of the glove that she was able to get to home on that. So Kat did what we needed her to do to put it in a good spot to able to score that run and finish it off and get the win. So pretty exciting there at the end after, kind of just a scoreless battle where you're like, man, we really need to get something going here, and it didn't really materialize. But again, able to do what we needed to do at the end and make it exciting. So kind of the theme of the day there for Saturday was to make every game exciting and close there at the end.
You certainly did that, and 3 straight one-run games that you had. Wanted to give a big shout-out as well to Emily Talbert in that Notre Dame game, who came on and got a really big strikeout for her team. With Sydney had pitched so well, left a couple runners on base. Emily came in with 2 outs and got the big strikeout to end that inning, and then got into a little bit of trouble herself in the next inning, and runner on third, nobody out to start it, and you escape the inning without allowing a run, and credit to Shauna as well for coming in there at the end. But Emily, just a big spot to put her in, and she stepped up, not to the plate, but to the circle,
yep.
and got the big strikeout and a really big out for her in a key moment on the season.
Yeah, absolutely. She's had several of those opportunities this year, and really proud of her for being able to come and do that. I mean, it felt like Notre Dame had runners at second and third a lot that game. I really don't know how many times, but there were a lot of times I'm like, man, here we go again. We got to figure out a way to keep them from scoring, and every time our pitchers did, whether it was Sid, Emily, or Shauna. But really happy for Emily to be able to come in there and do what she needed to do and what we asked her to do in that particular situation, because that was obviously a critical point in the game and gave us the opportunity to win.
And then, so in the last game against West Liberty, a 2-1 loss. West Liberty plating 2 across in the first inning and then being shut down the rest of the game. You scratched 1 across in the top of the 7th, but the right fielder made a heads-up play on, it was Katie Ernst that hit a ball. Right fielder made an error. She was trying to go to second, didn't realize how far away the ball was, threw out at second. Really unfortunate with runners at the corners there, and would have brought up Kat Treff there at the end. But it's certainly a learning experience. Obviously, the players, I can imagine, were just upset and head in hands and maybe some tears. But a really competitive performance against West Liberty, as we mentioned, the MEC champions, that they beat West Virginia State twice the next day. Had one of their pitchers, I think, pitcher of the year, Amen, threw a no-hitter on Friday herself. But one of the best pitching staffs in the conference. They have arguably the best hitter in the conference in Donzella, but really competitive for you guys and just that little bit short at the end.
Yeah. I mean, obviously it's disappointing. I felt like we battled with West Liberty all year. I feel like they're going to be. I kind of hope because even though I'm friends with their coach, the way West Liberty plays, I just feel like they're a natural rival for what we do, and the environment of the games we play. We were able to get a 1-0 win up at their place, and I felt like we had an opportunity in both games that we played here and just gave both of them away and let them get away from us a little bit. So, at the beginning of that game, to give up 2 runs there kind of early, wasn't really sure like how we were going to respond to that. And then all of a sudden, I keep seeing the zeros thrown up on the board over and over, keeping them in check where they need to be. And, we had a few opportunities to try to do something. It just didn't work out where we could advance. And then all of a sudden, it was like, this is our last chance. Let's let it go rip right there. And we made some things happen there in the last inning. And just unfortunate the way it played out because, I really thought we were going to at least tie it up. And I felt like we were going to pull ahead in that last inning to give ourselves a shot. And it just, that's sometimes the weird plays happen like that. And, like I said, it's no fault to anybody. It's just what it is and how it finished. And, really disappointed that it came to an end at that particular moment. Like you said, it was pretty emotional there.
Yeah, and really heartbreaking to end it that way. But on the weekend as a whole, want to just again, the pitching staff that you've been raving about, Shauna Laird, 11 2/3 innings, 7 hits allowed, 9 strikeouts. Her 3 earned runs all came against Concord in that win. Again, at the end of that Wesleyan game, came on and pitched 3 straight strikeouts there at the end with runners in first and second, nobody out, and got her out of a jam. Sydney Theobald, 17 1/3 innings pitched, 13 hits, 3 runs, 2 of them earned, and obviously Emily Talbert coming in at a big spot against Notre Dame. But aside from Emily, Shauna and Sydney both have another at least 2 years left, at least in Shauna's case. Sydney's got another 3 for her, just finding another reliever to replace Emily after this year. But certainly the pitching staff looking in really good shape for the future.
Yeah, we're going to add more depth to the pitching staff next year. Anticipate it being really competitive, and that can be said for everything. We've got a good core of returning players next year. We got a good freshman class coming in. Just really excited. We did a lot of good things this year. It didn't finish how we really wanted to in the regular season or in the tournament. So, like I said, I think that leaves a little bit of a bitter taste in some of our players' mouths who are returning, and hopefully the freshmen are excited about what we accomplished this year and are able to come in and keep that momentum moving forward. But I know we all need a little bit of a break and a reset after a tough year just in general with everything that's gone on. But we're definitely looking forward to what we can do next year. It's going to take a little bit of work to mesh everything together in the fall, but by the springtime, I think we're going to be doing some good things again, and look forward to seeing what plays out. So
yeah, certainly sending a message to the conference that maybe underestimated you guys for a good portion of the year.
Yep.
Hard to underestimate a team that came away 1 win short of the MEC championship game, but very excited to see what you guys can put onto the field next year, improve on the 25 wins from this year, compete at the top of the conference with West Liberty and Charleston and West Virginia State. All those top teams should be very, very fascinating for the next season. But want to thank you for coming on this week for the entire season with this hectic scheduling and playing and not playing certain days. But congratulations on the season as a whole, and thank you once again.
All right, thank you, sir.